ZWCAD or ZWCAD 2025 is now launched, and with that there are several new features and great enhancements that happened in 2025 release. So in this video, Scott on start and I will share with you some of the great new features of ZWCAD 2025. Now, if you don't know about ZWCAD, it's almost like AutoCAD but with a perpetual license and an affordable pricing. Now, if you want to try the new features with me, then download the free 30-day trial of ZWCAD using the link in the description of this video. Now, full disclosure, this is a sponsored video, but I've been a ZWCAD user for more than a year now. Now, to make the navigation easier, this video is divided into chapters that you can navigate to using video timeline. So with that, let's get started.
In this video, I'm going to discuss many of the new features in ZWCAD 2025 in no particular order. I'll start with the user interface. There's some significant enhancements here. So we have the properties palette over here, and right now it's docked. I can drag it out and make it a floating palette. I can drag the title bar over to the left side of the screen and it will flip over. And if I drag it, as I'm dragging it, observe that there's these arrows that appear on left and the right. If I drop this on one of those, it will dock. You can also auto hide your palette. So I can click right here to auto hide that. And what that means is that I can bring the cursor close to the title bar and have it display. And when I move it away, it disappears. This third item here is a menu, and you can choose to allow or disallow docking. I'm going to uncheck that. Then I can position this right over here on the left edge. This will save a lot of screen real estate. But did you know that you can also auto hide a docked palette? Let me show you how that works. So I'm going to re-enable docking, and then I'm going to drag this over here and dock it again, and then auto hide it. So now we have this situation where we have to actually click the docked title bar, and then it will display. In this mode, you can also stack your palettes. So for example, if I open up another palette like layer properties, and I drag that over here and dock it, then I'll follow that up by auto hiding it, and then we'll have stacked palettes. So there's properties, and there's the layer properties manager. So this really saves a lot of screen real estate. And each workspace stores the locations and status of your user interface elements. So if I switch now to 3D modeling, which is a new workspace, those palettes disappear and they appear in new areas. The command line is a different size. So I can go ahead and customize this. Maybe I want this docked over here and I want it auto hide mode on and so on. I can do that and it will remember that. So if I go back to my 2D drafting and annotation workspace, it's going to remember that I had properties and I had the layer properties manager below. And if I go back to my 3D modeling workspace, then we'll just have the properties over here. Now, these tabs contain 3D modeling tools, and you can cycle through them very easily by positioning the cursor over one of the tabs and rolling the mouse wheel. So this is a quick way of going through and finding the content that you're looking for. Another thing you can do is right-click on a tab here, and this will give you these menus where you can turn on and off various tabs and panels. You can also unlock the entire ribbon. This is sort of a radical move because it converts the entire ribbon into a palette. And although that's sort of interesting, I find it a little disorienting because I've grown used to the way that the ribbon looks. So I'm going to redock this back up at the top, and it converts back to the ribbon that I'm familiar with. You can also press the Alt key, and you'll see a bunch of keyboard shortcuts highlight. And the way that you use these is by pressing Alt plus whatever keyboard shortcut you want. So for example, if I want to go to the solid tab, I can press Alt SO, and it will take me there. And while I'm there, I can see shortcuts for each one of the commands on this panel. So you can really get used to all of these shortcuts if you prefer to enter them on the keyboard. Some of the panels will have these things called slide outs like this that have additional commands underneath them. So there's really a lot of new excellent features in the user interface. Another great feature with the user interface is the ability to move these panels around. So just position your cursor over the name down here and drag. You can reorder them, and you can also drag them out and have them become floating panels. And let me just drag out another one here. So each floating panel may or may not have a shelf like this, where you have additional commands. These two happen to have them. Notice that block does not. But the position that these extra commands are in can be swapped. And you can do that right here. Toggle orientation. And so then these will be on the right. So you can go between having it on the right or on the bottom. And this will allow you to minimize this panel to buttons like this. This takes up less room. When you click on it, you'll see all of the different tools that are available there. And of course, if you want to restore this back up to the ribbon, you can click this button right here, and that will return the panel up above. Wherever it came from, it'll put it back. Now, it might put it in a different order, the last order that you left it in. So if I want the draw panel back over here on the left, I have to drag it back. Moving on, I'd like to show you some of the 3D modeling features that are enhanced here. There's a new feature in the 3D modeling workspace on the Insert tab, right over here in the Import panel. It's called Step Import, and this allows us to import step files. This file format is common in a wide variety of 3D modeling programs, and the format stands for the Standard for the Exchange of Product Model Data. This allows us to bring in models off the internet much more easily. So I've downloaded a Ferrari F1 model in the step format. And note that you can import models using STEP, STE, or STP as the file extension. I'll open that, and then we're presented with a secondary dialog box, the Import Settings. And here we can choose whether we want this to go in the current drawing or a new drawing. I'll choose the current. And then the import method is that you can import it directly, or you can specify your own insertion point. I'll just import this directly. And of course, over here, you can choose the view that you'd like to have initially. I'll use Southwest Isometric, and the visual style I'll set to realistic. Here we can set the default if we want this to happen every time, and then just click OK to start the process. So this particular model is fairly complex and it has a large file of 378 megabytes. So it still imports very quickly, I'd say less than a minute. The model comes in rotated, and this is because the 3D modeling program that was used to build this model must have been a Y-up system, where the Y-axis indicates the up direction. You can see that here. ZWCAD has a Z-up system in the world coordinate system. So we have this mismatch, and that simply means that we need to rotate the model 90 degrees around the x-axis here. Now, the rotate command is designed to rotate around the z-axis. So in order to rotate this effectively around the x-axis, what we need to do is actually rotate the user coordinate system. And I'm just imagining seeing that rotate around the y-axis. So I'll type UCS, enter. I'll type Y, enter for the y-axis, enter. And then I'd like to rotate that negative 90. And so now the z direction is going this way along the central axis of the vehicle. This allows me to rotate it around the z-axis. So I'll use the rotate command, select the car, enter. The base point can just be the origin point. I'll type 0, 0, enter. And the rotation angle is going to be in this direction. It looks like it will be 270 degrees with polar on. So it's rotated correctly. But now I'd like to reset my user coordinate system back to the original world coordinate system. I'll type UCS, enter, and I'll use the default option, which is world, by pressing enter. And now it's back to the familiar Z-up system that we see here. And now I can take a look at this 3D model by holding down the shift key and dragging the mouse wheel to orbit. And I can zoom in by rolling the mouse wheel and drag the mouse wheel to pan. You can see that there are really no lags in this. I can zoom in, move around really quickly. And it's kind of amazing because this is a very complex, heavy model, but we have really no problems viewing it. Now let us see this model in detail. This model is imported as a block. I had to explode several levels of block nesting to get down to the constituent parts in this particular model. So this here is a surface. Some of the objects are solids, and some of them are surfaces. So like this tire here is actually a 3D solid, whereas this front arrow feature is a surface. So it's a kind of a mixture, this model, of solids and surfaces. And I explained that here. And I converted this 3D model into 2D line work in two different ways. And those are available here on the Home tab. There's Flat Shot and there's the Profile tool, which is actually the solprof command. And so Flat Shot works with 3D solids and surfaces. And it works fairly accurately. It's not perfect though. It missed a couple of little details here on these curved surfaces. Those could easily be drawn in. But down here, it missed the whole front arrow element because it was made out as a surface, and solid profile only works on 3D solids. Also, this command only works in a layout viewport, by the way. But both of those tools are available here and here. And if you forget where they are and you remember there's some kind of command that has to do with a profile, you can just start typing. Let's say I type in prof, and there's a new kind of fuzzy logic here that is able to figure out that I want this command or this other one because they both have those letters in them, rather than being very literal and having to start with SOL. It's able to figure out what I want based on just a few letters, really. You can also go up to the application menu and there's a search bar at the top. So if I type in prof up there, it's going to figure out that I want that command. And it also shows me where to find it. Now let's get into 3D here. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and drag the mouse wheel and orbit. Then I can roll the mouse wheel and drag the mouse wheel to zoom and pan. And there's really huge performance improvements here. Remember, this is a large model, 378 megabytes, and it's really fluid and easy to navigate. There's also some new visual styles over here. There's conceptual, we have shades of gray, and we have X-ray, which is kind of a nice mode that gives you a sense of edges and surfaces and transparency all in one. So very cool. Now, there's also slide outs here. I don't know if I discussed that here. So some of these panels will have additional tools down below. And if we go over to ZWCAD Classic, this is a real old school interface where we have toolbars and menus at the top. Now, I'm going to go back to 2D drafting and annotation, but there's a way that you can kind of combine them. So I can get the modern ribbon, but I can also include the menu bar right here. And that way I have access to some of the more obscure commands that are handy from time to time. So that's another nice feature. The final thing I'll leave you with is the ability to manipulate 3D objects, which is really greatly improved here. So I can take an object, let's say I'll take just this one arrow element in the back, and I'll copy that over here to examine it in more detail. So what I can do here is click on it, and then I need to go to the 3D modeling workspace. I'll click on it again. And then right here under selection, you can choose from these different gizmos. And these are ways that you can transform objects. So the move gizmo gives you this user interface element right here, and it allows you to move the object in the chosen axis direction. Not only can you move it in the three different axes, which are colored red, green, and blue, but you also can move it in 2 dimensions at once by clicking on these planes, which are colored red, green, and blue also. So if I click right on this plane, on the red plane symbol, it's actually allowing me to move it in the opposite axes, in the YZ plane here, in this case. So I can actually move it in that plane. It's hard to see though, unless we orbit and see how that looks here. See, I was able to elevate it above the race car and slide it over all in one move. That just makes things a little more efficient when you're working in 3D. Over here, you can also use the rotate gizmo, and this allows you to rotate in different directions according to which colored ring you select. And you can scale the object, and this is a uniform scale. By grabbing these dots at the end of the axes, you can scale it uniformly. We're not actually distorting it, we're just changing the size. The transform gizmo combines some of the features of each of the others. So here in this one gizmo, we can move, we can also rotate, and we can scale if we click on any of the dots here. We can't move it in 2 dimensions like we can with the move gizmo though. For that, you have to explicitly use the move gizmo and click on these planes. The transform gizmo does pack in most of the functionality in just one easy to use, intuitive system. So really impressive. When you're working in 3D, this is going to save a lot of time. Now, the shaded modes that we have here are not just for the viewport. You can actually plot using these modes. So if I go to export plot, these are shown right over here, shade plot. So however you last left it would be how it would plot if this is chosen as displayed. Or you can more explicitly choose a certain mode from the menu, and then the plot would be in that particular visual style. ZWCAD 2025 has a new feature called Vectorization, and it's located right here on this drop-down menu. Before we can use it though, we need to import a raster image so that we can then vectorize it and convert it into vectors. That is the type of mathematical entities that we typically manipulate here in ZWCAD. So I'm going to attach a raster image that I've downloaded off the internet. Here's a butterfly drawing, which is a line drawing, and I'll just bring that in. So I'll zoom in here and you can see this is a complex drawing, so it will be quite the challenge to vectorize. You can, of course, vectorize any type of line work. It could be a CAD drawing drawn on paper that was scanned, or it could be an old-fashioned illustration like this. But once you have an image attached to your drawing, you can then vectorize it. But before you dive right into that, there's another step, which is Vectorization Configure, and this allows you to adjust the way that this will be vectorized. And there are 2 different configurations that ship with the product, CAD drawing and contour. And you can make new configurations as well. But I'm going to take a look at what contour has in it by selecting it here and clicking edit. And then there are all these different parameters that you can choose and specify in here. And there's also a fit tab that allows you to control the way that the curves are fitted to the raster information. It can be arcs, circles, polylines, and you can control all of these things. I'm not going to make any changes myself, so I'll cancel out. But I notice up here that the current parameter configuration is CAD drawing. So I think this is more of a contour than a CAD drawing. So I'm going to select contour and say set current right here, and then close. And now I'm prepared to actually vectorize this. So I can go ahead and click Vectorization, and then click on the edge of the picture. And there's a note down here on the command line that says that we're limited to 2048 by 2048 pixel resolution. But just like that, it's vectorized. And then we have the ability to modify the vector graphics. So if you choose yes here, you're taken into a mode where you can zoom in and break, connect, or merge. So let's say I want to merge these 2. I'll click on this one and this one, and it changes the way that the vectorization has occurred. Let's try connect mode. I'll type C enter for connect mode, and I'll connect this with this, and they're connected together. There's also break, B enter for that, and then I can break a particular line at the point that I click. And then finally X for exit, and it says exit modification again, so I'll say yes. And it says you will not be able to modify the vector graphics after exiting. Continue, okay. And I can zoom out, and actually, in fact, you can modify this after the fact with this Vectorization Results Revision tool, which has been added. And this does the same thing, and you have to click the edge of the image to get into that mode. And now you can see right here, we're back to the same different options, break, connect, and merge. I don't need to do anything else, so I'll just type X, get out of that. And I would like to get rid of the image now so that I can see the vectorization. So I'll go into the button right here, the Image Manager, this tiny little arrow here in the corner, and then I can right-click on my image and detach it. And you can see that there are different colors of line work here. And this is because I modified some of these. And so this particular polyline is on a different layer. It's on the rectified layer. Whereas these other items are on the polyline layer. So it's separated the things that you've altered onto a different layer just in case you want to deal with them separately. But I don't. I'm satisfied with these, so I'm just going to select all of these polylines and move them onto the polyline layer. And so we have a fairly complex illustration that's been turned into vectors. In other words, polylines, circles, or arcs here in ZWCAD.
So these were the new features of ZWCAD. Now, if you haven't yet tried it, then get the 30-day free trial of ZWCAD using the link in the description of this video. Also, let me know what you want to learn next and we'll make your suggested video soon. So take care and I'll see you soon in another one.